Today's episode of The Real Deal with Damian Adams is brought to you by the 3pointconversion.com. Now, 3-point conversion is where fans' opinions truly matter. If you are looking for in-depth articles on football, basketball, hockey, boxing, every sport under the sun, the 3-point conversion has you covered. If you're looking for updates as quickly as humanly possible, the 3-point conversion has you there as well. So make sure you follow 3-point conversion on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, because the 3-point conversion is where fans' opinions matter. Thank you for listening to The Real Deal with Damian Adams. This is Real Sports Talk for the Real Sports fan, and I definitely appreciate all you Real Sports fans who are listening right now. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, thank you. Please do not forget to go and give us that 5-star rating, that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th. That 5-star rating and review will definitely be appreciated. If you're listening on the 3-point conversion station on Spreaker Radio, thank you. The 3-point conversion station is where fans' opinions matter. So please let us know what you think of the show. If you think the show is the best show in the world, let everybody know. If you think the show can improve, please let me know. And I need both your criticisms and your positive remarks to do my job well. So please give us both of those. I'm so excited about today's show. It's a packed one. We're talking about boxing, Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder. We're previewing Jose Pedraza versus Vasyl Lomachenko. We're going to talk about the Kareem Hunt situation in the NFL. We're going to recap NFL Week 13, preview Week 14, do forgotten players. But I can't do this by myself. So I had to get a special guest on who I know can talk about all these topics on a high level. Someone who I look to for their boxing knowledge. He is the host of the Pay Me No Mind podcast, the Bite Down Boxing podcast. He also has the YouTube channel Pay Me No Mind as well. Doing big things. If you want Washington Redskins talk, he has you. You want talk on entertainment, he got you. You want to talk on boxing, he has you. I'm talking about my main man, Wood, from Bite Down Boxing. What's going on, Wood?
Hey, how you doing, man? Thanks for the invite tonight. Not doing bad, man. Well, I don't want to I don't want to steal any of your thunder and hit on different things, so we'll get into it. But all in all, man, I cannot complain.
Glad to hear that. Very glad to hear that. Today's your second time on the show, so it means that the audience liked you just a little bit. So I'm glad to have you back on. And, of course, whenever I have a guest on, I want to talk about their favorite teams to start the show. And you are a big Michigan Wolverines fan. And you guys are 10-2. So when you look at that as a whole, not a disappointment. But in the last game, you guys did lose to Ohio State in an ugly manner, 62-39. What is your stance on Michigan football as a whole and Jim Harbaugh right now?
You know, I'm not too down on Harbaugh altogether. You know, and I'll put that disclaimer out there that I'm not an X's and O's football aficionado. You know, that's just not my thing. I didn't play in high school, didn't play in college, and, you know, I'm not a fantasy football player or fantasy football owner or anything. So you won't hear me doing, you know, I just don't come at the sport from that perspective. But I think even with my limited knowledge on it, I think when you look at the offense, it's not imaginative, it's not cutting edge, you know, compared to some of the powerhouses that I see, you know, across the landscape, especially the fixtures in that top 10, you know, with Dabo and obviously Alabama, you know, Chip Kelly during his heyday out in, as far as innovation, you know, out when he was at Autzen Stadium with the Ducks. we just don't really have that that innovative feel with what I see going on out there offensively, and then defensively, kind of speaks towards the whole thing, the situation. I really just don't see exceptional game-changing athletes at multiple positions, and I try to take it easy on these kids, man, because at the end of the day, these are 18 to 22-year-old men, maybe 23, young guys, and I never want to be disrespectful to any of them. But, I think Kareem Hunt was a guy that never jumped off the screen for me as an elite back, but he's a guy that stayed his 4 years and fashioned himself into a difference-making back and, a wildly successful collegiate back. But I would struggle to see him, doing big things on Sunday afternoons and whatnot. But, I just think I just don't see that sense of excellence and confidence in the guys that we have right now. And, we're a couple years into Harbaugh putting this team together. And then lastly, I hate to speak too long on stuff, but at the quarterback position, man, I think it's telling that, in a couple of his years, since he's been there, it's been fifth-year guys from other programs with Rudock and now Patterson. And, as the guy who we presumed or assumed was a college QB guru, we really haven't seen him have that fantastic signal caller out there underneath him. And I've been calling for us to move for there to be a move towards more mobile quarterback play versus just drop back passers. And I thought we had some of that this year, but they went away from it when it mattered most, in that Ohio State game, in my opinion. So, but overall, 10-2 is going in the right direction.
Yeah, you definitely can't be mad at a 10-2 record. We all know in college football it comes down to beating your rivals. Like, with me being an LSU guy, no matter how successful LSU is, it's still going to be that cloud that we can't beat Alabama hanging over our heads. So when you have that cloud, it seems like no matter what you do, that cloud is still just hanging there, and your season just has a damper on it.
Definitely. But if I could say one thing, I think if we look at the news today with Urban Meyer announcing that he's leaving after the Rose Bowl, I really think, I really feel like we were ambushed a couple of Saturdays ago in that game. I would have to assume that most of the players knew what the deal was, and that many of the faculty and the staff and all of that, I have to believe that a lot of them knew what was really going on and what was, the news that was to come. And I have to feel that that factored into them playing and executing on the level that they did that day. And so I really feel a little better about the game, although, they hung 62 on us. But now you see just a couple of weeks later, maybe it was something extra going on there. And I'm saying that because earlier today I'm listening to Chris Carter on First Things First. And he said he's been having, this conversation has been ongoing for the past month with him and Urban Meyer. So if he knew, I'm pretty sure, like I said, that others inside the program knew that was a very special game that was, circled on the calendar a second time because they knew what the future implications were.
That's a very good point, because you think about Ohio State, they played uninspired football all season. And for the Michigan game, they came in inspired. They definitely had a fire underneath them for that game. So that could be a very true point that you made there when it comes to that. So for Michigan, with Harbaugh, and you think about Urban Meyer leaving, next year around this time, do you think it's a must-win against Ohio State for Harbaugh to be able to continue coaching this team?
to raise the stakes against him. With him facing with him having a game at home, with him having, going up against a rookie, first-time head coach, a guy having his debut in the series. I think that's going to be. I think it's going to be very hard to not come away victorious and him stay there. But I will say, and I'm always trying to point out unique stuff and appeal to people's reasoning and a little bit of logic and whatnot. Not trying to say that I'm the smartest guy in the room, but John Cooper went when he was at OSU. I believe he went 1-10-1 or something, 2-10-1 or something like that during his stretch. Now he didn't fare too well against Michigan, but he slayed everybody else on that schedule. So I know it's going to be, if he was to lose next year, I know the calls will be out there to move in another direction. But if a real candidate, a real hot commodity is just not out there anywhere on the landscape, what do you do? And I understand the guy makes over $7 million a year. I get it. But at the same time, we're getting ready to see now what this Sean Day guy does in replacing, Urban Meyer, and maybe it's a smooth transition. Maybe it's not. I mean, Herman the Meyer coaching tree, he hasn't exactly set the world on fire down in Texas right out of the gate. The PJ Fleck guy that's at Minnesota now with the row to boat stuff. I mean, he came over from, the school in Michigan, and, he hasn't set the world on fire despite having a very bright star, just a year and a half ago or something. So it's no rush to move on from Harbaugh.
Yeah, I'm with you there. It's very tough to beat the elite teams. So when you have a team like Michigan not being able to beat Ohio State, or a team like LSU that can't beat Alabama, you have to look at the rest of the schedule. Like with LSU this year, you had some great victories over Miami, over Georgia. You have to look at that and not just look at the main rivalry game and get stuck on that. But let's move on to pro football. Now, your pro football team is in the D.C. area. The Washington football team that's currently 6-6 took a little bit of a beating last night against Philadelphia. Lost 28-13. It wasn't really close. They've looked pretty good early on, controlling the ball, good defense. And then you had the horrific Alex Smith injury where he broke his leg. And now you're kind of scrambling at the quarterback position. What is your thoughts on the Washington season so far?
Just so people don't think you don't know what you're talking about, but it was actually Colt McCoy who had the same injury a similar injury to Alex Smith, but Colt got hurt last night. It's such a mixed bag in D.C. right now. Relegated to operating with a dude who didn't even start the season on a roster, I believe, in Sanchez, and then doesn't have the most promising resume, for you to have a lot of faith that he can get it done to help the team, win the majority of these remaining games. What do we have, 4 left?
Yes, we are, 4 games left.
4 games left, and with one of those being against Philadelphia, and then I believe also have to play Dallas again too. So, wow. And then, I'm gonna be honest, man. I was ready to move on. I really want to move on from the team president. I believe that's his role, the team president, Allen. I believe it's Bruce Allen. I really would like to just go in a different direction there. And then I think also Jay Gruden may not be a horrible coach, but once again, I just don't see that innovative play calling. I don't see that energetic interaction with his team. That synergy that we see with Goff and McVay out in Los Angeles. We don't see in your situation with Breeze and
Sean Payton.
Sean Payton. We don't see that type of relationship. So to me, it's just a malaise over the team. And then defensively, man, I feel like that's the strength of the team, but it's just it's something. It's just something missing as far as again, like I said, with Michigan, man. And I'll try to get it on with my point, but when I watch week to week, man, and you check out a game with Hopkins and Houston, and every time I see this Keenan Allen cat with the San Diego Chargers, and then Antonio Brown and Schuster sniff to some degree. But man, when you don't have that number, that wide receiver number one that's going out there getting 7 to 12 catches a week and driving the energy of the team and getting the chunk plays and all of that, it's hard to put together 12, 14, 15 play drives. And if you couple that with the fact that you're horrible in the red zone, you're just a 20 to 20 team, and that's what's been plaguing, Washington for the past several years, man, is the really probably scoring maybe 18 to 22 points a game, in this stretch. And right now we're just in an era with high-powered offenses and, the big play wide receivers and the deep throwing quarterbacks, man. You got to be able to get up to 27 to 33 points a game week to week.
Yeah, no, it's very true. Even when Alex Smith was healthy, you guys weren't going to score that many points. Like, you guys were going to control the ball with the run. And Adrian Peterson, found the fountain of youth this year. He's been pretty good. And like you said, the defense has been the strength. And I think your defense is the strength when you play against teams who aren't going to just air it out. Like against the Saints, we kind of saw where their secondary got kind of exposed in that game. And that game was kind of rough, too, because it was the Drew Brees breaking the record night, Monday night in the Superdome. There was a lot of factors that went into why that game was so lopsided. But with the Redskins, if you get Alex Smith back next year, hopefully he's back and healthy and everything, do you think he makes enough of a difference to make you guys contenders? Or do you think you guys went in the wrong direction with getting Alex Smith to replace a Kirk Cousins?
No, I think it was definitely time. I do not dislike Cousins, but I think if you look at his performance the last couple of weeks in some of the must-win games that they had, this week only getting 10 points up against the Patriots and looking ineffective. A couple of weeks ago, I know he threw the pick six in that game or later in that game and played a major role in them dropping that game.
Against Chicago.
I can't even remember who. Against Chicago, yeah. And that's what I'm saying. If you're evaluating things, you really don't know if it was Kirk Cousins' problem or if it was Jay Gruden. But neither one of those guys win primetime games or big-time games. And Gruden's record within the NFC East is not great. And like I said, man, when you only get so many chances a year to have that Sunday night game or to have the Thursday night game or to be on Monday Night Football, and when you don't show up repeatedly, I don't care. I mean, he basically, man, he's a 7-9 to 9-7 kind of coach, and that's just not gonna get it. But like I said, man, how can you knock the guy if he's down to a third QB? But to get back to your question though, more specifically, to be honest with you, man, I don't dislike Alex Smith. I don't think we had a wide receiving core that could help him look better than being a game manager, but he's way too conservative. It's a reason why he's been pushed out in the places that he's been pushed out. It's a reason why, Mahomes is already at 40-something touchdowns, and Alex was at like a dozen or something. He's not. I mean, if we had to have him, I guess we'd take him. But being where we are now in the standings, I don't know what we can do as far as getting up high enough in the draft. I know it's not a QB-laden draft, by no stretch of the imagination. I guess it would be exciting if there was a chance to take a look at the Haskins kid, being that he's from the DMV area. But I think moving into next year, man, the most exciting thing is to see if Dice retires to the team, the running back out of LSU, to see what condition he's in and to see could he infuse some youth into the offensive side of the ball. But like I said, Josh Doxson has come along, and I'm starting to see a little bit of fire in him, but he's still not lethal down the field just yet. Still no 100-yard receiving games. Now, I don't even think he's cracked 65.
Yeah, that's a problem. You need that one receiver who you can go to in crunch time. Even, Drew Brees, who is known for facilitating the ball and frustrating fantasy owners by getting the ball to everybody on the team, this year has had to depend heavily on Michael Thomas, because Michael Thomas is that good of a wide receiver that it's like, okay, whenever I need this third down, I'm looking to Michael Thomas, or I'm looking to Kamara. So you need those weapons that you can depend on. Even when it comes to the great quarterbacks, they need that one guy they know is dependable. Now, go ahead.
You gotta have that trusty wide receiver, or you gotta have that great tight end. And I just feel like Reed is kind of up and down, but a highly talented guy, highly capable guy. But he's getting on the other side. He's getting to be 6-7 years deep in this thing. Several key pieces of the defense are aging, although we do have a couple young Alabama boys in there. But, I'm just at the point now that in the middle of that 3 to 5 year plan that we may have been working, that the certain key players are, like I said, hitting on the other side of being 5 years in and more. And then you kind of have to reset and get to another 3 to 5 year window.
Yeah, definitely. One thing that surprised me about the tight end situation, you talk about those people who are over the hill, Vernon Davis is having more of an impact than Reed is. And
exactly.
And that was something that was like, whoa, okay, that's shocking. You thought Reed would be, especially finally being healthy, he would have a bigger impact this year. So
yeah, Reed, like you said, with him finally being healthy, with the exception of him getting that helmet-to-helmet hit last week and throwing his helmet into the sidelines, man, he really just hasn't seemed like a guy who was really fired up this year.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. We haven't seen anything from him to let you know that he wanted, to be that guy this year. So I definitely agree with that. And speaking of being the guy, let's move on to boxing a little bit. And two guys who are trying to prove themselves as the guy in the heavyweight division. This past Saturday night, we had Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder. And before we even get into the main event, what was your thoughts on the card as a whole and the production that Showtime did on this pay-per-view event?
It didn't seem like their sharpest night. And I'm going to be, I watched it from a movie theater. That's kind of my new place to go for the pay-per-views, unless it's just a truly loaded card or truly awesome main event. This one was awesome, but we kind of did. It was a lot of unknowns. It was a lot of unknowns going into this one. So, it was a great night. It ended up being a great night, but going in, we just didn't know. But from what to answer your question, something just seemed a little different. I mean, a little off for it to be Showtime. And you know, Hurd is coming back in a comeback fight. You know, coming off of surgery against a guy we had no idea who he really was. And then Joe Joyce getting some TV time in the heavyweight division. And then
Luis Ortiz.
You know, Kaufman and Luis Ortiz. Not the most. It was probably a B minus night.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Because you think about the 3 fights before, you got the first round knockout, like you mentioned, the first fight, a little exciting. You get a new face, a new name you get to see there. The Ortiz fight was not exciting at all. Like, it wasn't Ortiz's fault. Ortiz did his job.
No.
He was dominating. Kaufman just didn't have an answer for him at all. And honestly, I wish the fight would have got stopped earlier. And with Hurd, you understand him taking that fight because he's coming back off of surgery. So you understand him taking that bout. And the guy was game. Like, the guy who he fought came to fight. You know, he came in, rushed him, and fought his fight of going inside. But just the power of Hurd took over. And then we had the main event. So Fury and Wilder, you mentioned the known unknowns. Like, Fury, you know, it's his first time fighting a real challenge in probably over 2.5, maybe 3 years because of his personal demons. But he's always been a talented guy. Somebody who has a victory over, you know, Vladimir Klitschko, which was pretty decisive. So you have a victory like that on your record, you have to respect that. And we forget how young he is. Because he had 2 years off, he's 3 years younger than Wilder. But coming into this fight, you're like, you know, it seems like Wilder's the guy who should be more prime, been more active, hasn't taken any breaks. But, you know, Wilder's always lacked technique, and Fury's someone who we think of as a technician in the ring. So going into this fight, what were your thoughts, before they even started going into the fight? What was your thoughts on the fight?
My opinion of this fight really moved drastically from the moment it was announced up into actual fight night. And of course, we get the All Access. I think they did 2 episodes of the All Access, and I'm not a big time press conference guy with all the antics and the theater of all of that. That's not really my thing. But once I started looking into the All Access footage and getting to really hear where Tyson Fury was mentally, and to understand that he was really back, and I really got a sense that although we hadn't seen the comeback fights or the type of tune-up fights, it wasn't really a step up in between those or across those 2 tune-ups. It was kind of just 20 rounds of him just being in the ring, going through the motions, so to speak. But as I started listening to him and checking out the camp and seeing how relaxed he was, and then getting to an understanding of kind of his resilience as a man and what he was out to accomplish and to reclaim his life and his identity as a boxer and all of that. And I kind of started getting a sense that he was coming into the ring where it wasn't going to be a 3 or 4 round fight. And then on the other hand, with Wilder, just getting a sense to see, how he works out and what his gym, what his regimen is, and how does he get prepared for fights, and what kind of, does he have a strength and training coach, or is he trying something new for the first time? And I think that kind of hurt him, in my opinion, because I'm just not a big fan of his trainer, the JD's cat, and Wilder kind of seems like it just seems like JD's is along for the ride, and Wilder is driven and self-motivated, and everything that he's accomplished getting started late in the game, being an Olympian and earning a bronze medal, going out here and going from, I forget where he used to work. I don't know if it was fast food or in retail or something, but for him changing his life to get to where he is now, and, the stories with his daughter and everything and her health problems. And then, of course, for those that looked at him for his social commentary and everything, it's almost like he's running the show himself. And then with their virtually, no other U.S. heavyweights who have really galvanized the fan base, it's kind of like he's just, doing all of this by himself.
No, it's definitely very good analysis of what was going on towards the beginning of the fight. And my thoughts when it first got announced, I wasn't a fan of it because I thought Tyson Fury didn't earn this opportunity. But I did understand it from Wilder's perspective, because Wilder's been chasing Anthony Joshua, and Anthony Joshua's team didn't want to make the fight, so he needed a name to be able to generate the type of money that he made on Saturday night. In the heavyweight division, Tyson Fury was the only other name where he can go, because there's other people he could have fought. Like, I don't think he's fought Danny White yet, but that wouldn't have, honestly, what would that have accomplished going against that type of guy? And even though, that's no disrespect to someone like a Danny White, that's a quality opponent. A Tyson Fury, especially overseas, that name carries weight. So the fact that he went into this fight, and if he would have, won hands down, it definitely would have, put a definite notch in the belt that he can, take forever. But like you said, once you start getting to the story of Tyson Fury and what he's been through, and we already know Deontay Wilder's story, it definitely made the fight more appealing. And you start to look back, and you, like myself, I started going back and watching Tyson Fury's old fights. You're like, okay, this could be an interesting matchup. He's back to being that technician and being able to slip punches and do those things that he was able to do early in his career. This could be very interesting. And I still thought Wilder was going to eventually connect with a knockout punch. And some people thought he did. Some people think that the count was a little long. They think that he actually did get the knockout punch that we all thought he would get eventually. But I think that the fight did live up to expectations. Did you think the fight itself lived up to the hype?
Yeah, I thought it exceeded expectations. Didn't you have in your write-up, didn't you have a 9th round knockout?
I did.
I'm about to say, because I thought we had the same thing when I read it. So, yeah, we were right spot on. And, but, yeah, I pretty much, I think it exceeded all expectations. I think, again, it was a slower start, and I think that's something that I kind of anticipated was a slower start. And it was a moment in there in the second or third round, might have been the second, where Deontay tried to tried to just full-on rush Fury. And, I thought that he would try to do something early before Fury could really adjust to the magnitude, of the fight. And that's what's so amazing and really kind of was a precursor when I saw Tyson in the wings waiting for the instruction to start his ring walk, man, when he was super relaxed, when he was rapping to the music and, clowning around and doing his thing. It's like, this dude is just built for this, man. I mean, he's a true boxer. He might not have that one-punch power and all the power and everything, but his guile and his confidence in himself, and that was one thing that stood out from the press conference or from the fight week stuff was it was just mainly him on stage against Wilder and kind of Wilder's little inner circle, and there was no backing down in Fury. There was no fear in him, even though he was riling all of these guys up and all the energy that was coming from the Wilder camp. He was cool and collected, and calm and collected. And that just let me know right there, getting into the first round, to see him starting to do some of his taunts and, putting his hands behind his back, trying to get in Deontay's head a little bit. It just was like, hey man, this dude brings a different feel to the fight that he's gonna be in. And once he got the jab working, I enjoyed the fight, man. I totally enjoyed the fight. I think it was a little disappointing to see Deontay continue to make the same mistakes. Like you said, not throwing that right straight, not working the jab more, not jabbing to the body, not taking advantage of Tyson Fury's longer and wider upper body. And it'd be the same. It was almost the same as watching Michigan's offense, man. Straight up the run, straight up the middle runs for 3 yards instead of some of the more exotic stuff or some of the more complex schemes that we see. It just was a shame that and that's what kills me when you have some criticism or some critiques of Deontay's game. If you say anything about him to a lot of other black fans, and I'm just what I've been observing the last couple of weeks, to even question his game is like you're not supporting this black champion. You're not supporting, our champion. And it's like, nah, man. I mean, fighting is more than power. You can have all the power in the world, but if you run into a red hot Randy Johnson who's throwing heaters and 98, 101 mile per hour fastballs all day, and he's locked in the zone, Mark McGuire ain't doing much against him.
That's definitely very good analysis. Love how you brought it full circle with Michigan. And the thing that I didn't get watching the fight, you mentioned that you're not a big fan of the trainer. I didn't get it to really hear what the trainer was saying to Deontay because I was watching it at Dave & Buster's. So the environment's a little loud, so I didn't really get to get the audio like I would like. But just watching it, you're like, when is the adjustment going to happen? When is he going to adjust to Tyson doing the feints? So Tyson was consistently doing the feint where he would move his arms up and down 2 times, then he would jab off of it, or he would back up. Now, I understand it might take you a few times to adjust to that, but once you see him doing that, why not attack when he's doing that and throw straighter punches? And you saw one of the few times he threw a straight right hand, like on point in that 12th round, the damage it did. He could have been doing that earlier.
Right.
And
right.
Why he had a few moments in the fight where he was throwing looping punches to the body, and those are landing because when you think Deontay Wilder, you see that looping punch. You're never going to think to protect your body. Whenever you see a looping punch from Deontay, you're going to think to protect your head. So those are going to land all night. They were there, and he stopped throwing those. So it's up to the trainer to get back into Wilder's head, like, hey, those punches to the body are landing. You need to get points. Like, you may not be able to knock this guy out. Get points. Those points are there. Like you said, he has a very long torso, so you can hit the body all day. As good as Tyson's head movement is, he can only move his body so much. So why not attack the body, and then later on that head shot's going to be there. I just didn't get why that adjustment took so long to make. And go ahead.
I was just gonna say, yeah, and I also saw some criticism on my video about they kind of like hinted at some intelligence or lack of intelligence on Deontay Wilder's behalf, and I don't see that at all. I don't see a dumb fighter. I don't see an ignorant fighter. I just see a guy who knows he has an eraser, and he just is confident that at any moment he can erase any problem that's that he's having a hard time solving, and he's looking for he's just looking to time that one shot, and for some reason it came to him very late that the best way to land that was to straighten it up and make sure you cut down. I mean, the shortest distance from A to B is a straight line, and that's what I said earlier. It's almost like he's running all of this by himself, and he really doesn't really defer to his corner the way that Vladimir Klitschko deferred to Emmanuel Stewart, or the way that Lennox Lewis deferred to Emmanuel Stewart. He doesn't have that guy sitting in his corner, and so even when I heard him on the at the fights yesterday on XM Radio on Fight Nation, and he was constantly saying in between the rounds and walking back to the corner, he was running over in his own mind what he was doing wrong and what he needed to do and what he was seeing. He never said anything about really acknowledging what his corner was trying to tell him. So, that just, like I said, it just seems like he's running the whole show.
Yeah, and no matter how good you are, you still need somebody there. Even, Floyd Mayweather had Roger, You still need someone who can see what maybe you're missing. Now, we get a draw. How did you feel about that decision?
I wasn't shocked by the decision. I wasn't mortified by it. I didn't get mad and say, this is why boxing is always losing fans. This is the problem with boxing and all of that. I think, and then I think the last thing that I saw from exiting the theater was the fact that the total punches landed, whatever credence you lend or give to punch stats, I was shocked that only 13 punches, separated the action. So I think, when you go back and think about it, I didn't see 4 rounds for Deontay Wilder myself. But when you look at it, if it's going to be a fight that's coming down to, an average of 9 punches or 7 to 9 punches for each fighter per round, and maybe every round Fury is just outlanding Wilder by 2 or 3 punches. That's not a lot for the judges to really pick apart and have a wide decision. So, or it's just a chance that I don't think people factor into. A lot of people don't even know the rules of boxing and scoring, fights. I was talking to a guy in the break room today. When I said it was 2 knockdowns, he was like, "Oh, well, he won." Like, we didn't even talk about nothing else in the fight. I just said it was 2 knockdowns, and he was like, "Oh, well, he won." And so, some people gave Wilder more credit because the dude was laying flat on his back, versus just maybe being on his side. So, like, people just create scoring criteria. So, I wasn't really shocked by the it being a draw. I found it very hard to have it 115, 111 for Wilder. I just didn't see stretches of the fight where he really dictated the action, and swinging wildly and missing all night long, and just displaying some pretty poor boxing technique and not being able to make adjustments. I just don't know how some people look at that and don't have concerns about that, or like that doesn't bother you or something. And the fact of the matter is, some of that he was looking like that because of some of Fury's footwork and movement, and like you said, all the feinting and keeping him off balance, and then landing the jab at the right times and breaking up his rhythm and everything. And then I think even more so, like, just when you look at the ring generalship of Fury, and even when he did get in trouble, the craft that he still was able to exhibit. You know, tying up. Some of these cats get hurt nowadays. Good up and coming prospects get hurt nowadays. Running from, they run into that step up fight and get hurt and don't even know how to survive. And then you have a kid who is at 15, 16 wins and his career takes a major setback because he had no idea what to do once he got hurt.
That's definitely very true. And for me, what shocked me, I wasn't shocked by the draw. And I had the same reaction you had. I didn't think it was this outrageous decision that, makes you think why we're losing fans in boxing. Because if Fury wins, you still get the rematch. That's one thing I wanted to emphasize to people, because Wilder had a rematch clause. So if Fury gets the decision, right, you still get the rematch anyway. And plus, it was an exciting fight. You might get a rematch whoever won. Now, for me, the thing that shocked me is that once I did my YouTube video and I put it on Facebook and stuff, I was shocked by the people who, like you said, were saying that Wilder won the fight. I'm like, were you watching the 9 or 10 rounds where he just wasn't landing anything significant at all? Because with Tyson, he doesn't have that, one punch power, but he was landing solid shots. There was times in the fight where, he made Wilder miss and countered. And I guess because we both love boxing, we see it differently. When we see like a counter punch, maybe that's more impressive than just landing 2 big shots over the fight. Like, we see consistent counters and consistent jabs. That consistency may stand out to us more than maybe the average fan. Not to say that we're not average, but when it comes to boxing, we're going to watch it more than the average fan. So with me, I was so shocked by all the comments I got of, how are you saying that Wilder didn't win this fight when he got those 2 knockdowns? Or some people, like you said, make up their own rules. One guy told me, he's like, well, if you didn't have the rounds and you just watch it just timeless, you would give Wilder the fight. I'm like, you can't just take away the rounds. That's what makes it a sport. Like, if you take away the rounds, now you just got a street fight. And I think, of course, Wilder will win a street fight because he has the power, but that's what makes it a sport. Like you said, when you have somebody missing wildly, for me, that takes away points. That's just something that you missing wildly, you just seem befuddled during the round. That takes away points for you. When Fury's out there just, even if he's playing around, he's got his hands behind his back, and you're not able to attack at all, that shows that Fury's mind games were working on Wilder. I thought Fury dominated the fight. I had it 9 rounds to 3 for Fury, 115-111 for Fury. So the 115-111 for Wilder is a wild score in my opinion, but I'm not upset at the draw because we're going to get a rematch. Now, we do differ on our opinions of the rematch, because I think that Wilder could win a rematch, because I thought Fury fought the best fight he could fight in this one, but you see it a little differently.
Yeah, and really quickly, I think one thing that we need to consider for everybody is that go look into the scoring criteria for boxing. But then I think also we need to understand that just like with baseball, where you have pitchers, you have pitchers umpires, and you have hitters umpires, and they may, a pitcher's umpire is going to have a bigger strike zone, and it's going to give that 2 inches or 1.5 inches off the plate. That might be a strike for this for this umpire, and then for the hitters, it might be a smaller strike zone that's getting called. And that forces the pitcher into some mistakes, probably because he might not have his control that day, so he's not getting the strikes called that he wants. So maybe he presses a little bit, and he hangs some fastballs, make it straight down the pipe versus painting the corners and whatnot. So I think tying that over to the world of boxing, you don't know between those 3 judges sitting there, you don't know which one is looking for aggression or, and it's not effective aggression. It's just aggression. You know, who's coming forward. You know, you can be coming forward, but you could be getting tagged while you're doing that. So I think we kind of don't, from fight to fight, we kind of don't always, and I didn't even really know who these refs be. I really wasn't that familiar with these three refs, to be honest with you. But, you know, I think from a fan perspective, you know, you just, before we go to criticizing some of these referees sometimes, you got to know a couple of fights that they've called and get an understanding, like, what are they looking for? Maybe this guy, you know, maybe Fury's jabs and just more, less power punching, you know, and the counter punching. Maybe somebody was looking for more towards, you know, Wilder's power shots. And kind of with the way that the fight played out, since it's not a free-flowing offense, you know, it was sporadic in nature. Maybe you forgot about some of Fury's work at the beginning of the ring, or Fury's work at the minute and a half, and then you saw a little flurry or a little, you know, not really a combination from Wilder, but maybe, you know, in that final minute, maybe he had two heavy shots. So I just think it's things that factor into it that we don't really consider when we go to criticizing these judges for it. But in the rematch, I don't totally disagree with you. I think this fight could really be easy for Wilder if he uses 2 or 3 tools versus just using one tool. It could be a really easier fight for him because he is athletic. He is explosive. He does have timing. He can do some of this different stuff, but he can't walk in there and think that I think he got a little sidetracked, or not the word I was looking for, but maybe he thought he was just going there to chop down a tree, you know, and it wasn't no stationary target just there waiting to catch his right hand all night. But I think with you know, obviously I just think with Fury, he could just make less mistakes. I mean, he was very sharp the other night, saw everything, and just those 2 bad moments came up. But if he's sharper, I can't see him being in much better shape. I just think it's a chance for him. Basically, it's a chance for him to eliminate mistakes.
Yeah, definitely. I can agree with that. Like, I thought Fury fought as close to perfect as he could, but maybe he could be even better in the rematch. But I think with Wilder, there's so much room for improvement. All the things that we mentioned, the not going to the body, the not throwing straighter punches, being wild at times, he can really cut down on so many things and fight a better fight. And like you mentioned,
uppercut.
Yes, that's a very, yes. Why not, you know, mix up your attack? Throw an uppercut. Like, he had a nice uppercut against Ortiz that landed. That was nice in that fight. In this fight, he definitely could have landed that as well. So with Wilder, there's so much more he could do. But like you mentioned, maybe he's not being taught that because his trainer is just, you know, maybe just a yes man on the roster. So if you don't have that trainer to challenge you, and you've been surviving on just your right hand this whole time, why are you going to think any different? Like, if you put yourself in his shoes, you're like, oh, I got my right hand, I'm good. As long as I land this 1-2 times around, or 2 times a fight, I'm good to go. I've literally knocked out almost everybody I fought. The one time I did knock the guy out, I got a rematch against him, knocked him out the next time. So you just have this mentality of, I know I can knock this guy out. So we'll definitely see going forward. Let's talk about the fight that's coming up this Saturday night. This one is going to be on a whole different spectrum when you talk about boxing. It definitely shows how, when you think about boxing, how widespread it is as far as styles, matchups, and things of that nature. When we have Jose Pedraza going against Vasyl Lomachenko. Pedraza comes to this fight at 25-1 with 12 knockouts. Lomachenko is 11-1 with 9 knockouts. Both of these guys are both technicians. Pedraza has the size advantage. He's the taller guy. He has a longer reach. I believe he has like a 4 or 5 inch reach advantage over Lomachenko. And we saw Lomachenko in his last fight have a little trouble with the bigger guy. Now, Pedraza is not as big as Lomachenko's last opponent. as Lomachenko went up in weight. But Pedraza does have that reach advantage that I talked about and is a very slick boxer. What are your thoughts going into this matchup?
I think, Lomachenko really doesn't have to do much different than what he's normally done. I just think we'll be keeping an eye on how does he recover from, I think he has surgery on his labrum, and it's very telling or very interesting that a fighter, a pound-for-pound guy comes back and faces a two-division world champion. When in contrast, we just mentioned Jared Hurd. He came back from a shoulder procedure, and he faced a guy that we never heard of before, on this side of the world. But Loma is coming back and facing a two-division champion, two-time champion with this 5.5 inch reach. Pedraza is very irky-jerky. Really knowledgeable fighter, in my opinion. I think I don't know what was going on with him a couple years ago when he was dismantled by Gervonta Davis at junior lightweight, but since he's come back, he's on a 3-fight victory, 3-fight streak and wins. Got a good win on the road in the hometown of Raymundo Beltran, and counter punches. I feel like he's a guy that knows all the tricks and has a good game about him and can pretty much do whatever he wants in the ring, has decent power, doesn't have lights out power so much. I think it'll just be interesting since he is coming up in weight. I don't know. I don't really see, a distinct size advantage between either fighter, but that 5.5 inch reach, if he's able to time Lomachenko and get into that rhythm that he fights with, and that's, to me, where kind of the crux of this fight is. Both of these guys have very unique rhythms, but Pedraza it's a completely different rhythm. So I'm just wondering how those two rhythms really combine for, how do they fight? I mentioned this in a couple podcasts ago when I went and watched over to Chicago to watch Vargas and Delorme a couple months ago, in October. Both of those guys had completely different body movements and rhythms that neither one of them was really in position to punch the other guy for large stretches of the fight just because of the way that they naturally move. So, like I said, with this one, it'll just be interesting to see the difference in movements and body movement in this one. It'll be interesting to see how these guys actually get together. But, Loma is deadly with both hands as far as, making contact. He varies his speed of his punches. He varies his power in his punches. He's always a couple of steps ahead of his opponent. And this is just the best fighter that Pedraza has been in there with. So I think, Lomachenko will be trying to, with Pedraza having that bad night against Gervonta Davis, he'll be trying to give him some reason to have some doubt again. This is a guy that's had to rebuild his career and his confidence after that fight, after that loss to Davis. And he's been successful at that, so he's motivated, he's encouraged. But, Lomachenko could present him with some looks that frustrates him, and kind of puts him back in that place where he's come from.
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything you said. I went on the 3-point conversion radio show on last Saturday and talked about this fight just a little bit. And I described it as like the ultimate chess match because they both have such different movements in how they fight. So there's going to be a lot of jockeying for position. Lomachenko a lot of times against most fighters is able to get different angles. I think Pedraza is going to do a good job of moving his feet and making sure that Lomachenko isn't on the side of him, punching him from the side angles and stuff like that. So it's going to be interesting watching that dynamic of Lomachenko trying to get to the side and use his wonderful foot movement to, throw Pedraza off and Pedraza countering that. It's something that I think boxing nerds like ourselves will enjoy. I don't know if the casual fan will enjoy that part of it, but it's something that's going to be very interesting just seeing those two guys jock for position like that. But I do have to put you on the spot. What is your prediction for this fight?
That's tough, man. I hadn't really dug into this one yet because I've still been climbing out of last week's fight. So I really hadn't taken this one fully into consideration just yet. I would have to go with Lomachenko for the win. I don't know if it could be by knockout. I mean, I don't look at Lomachenko as the big power puncher, especially now that he's coming up in weight a little bit. He mainly can do it with hitting you with shots you don't see or overwhelming you with the activity. You know, we've had all the guys who quit, but it could be by body shot. Like I said, he's a guy. He's talented with both hands. I just don't think Pedraza quite has the ceiling that it might require to take down a guy like Lomachenko. But I will say that I do think Pedraza, with the exception of Jorge Linares, might be one of the best fighters that he's faced. No disrespect to Gary Russell Jr., who had a very bad night, an off night, some weight issues that were induced by some weight issues, some late in the game weight issues. So, but I think Pedraza, like you said, with boxing fans, I think it's going to be an excellent scrap. But I just think Loma probably comes out of this one with victory number 12.
Yeah, I'm right there with you on this one. I think it's going to be a good fight. You're going to see Lomachenko challenged just on the aspect of trying to get that position. And Pedraza with the reach advantage and having his technique, I think we'll be able to touch Lomachenko a little bit. But Lomachenko, like you said, with both hands being so talented and being able to go up and down, change speeds, all those things that you mentioned, I think he wins this fight by decision. But it won't be a wash. He'll definitely have to work for it. But I'm definitely looking forward to that one. And see if one thing I beg ESPN to stop doing. Stop showing replays during live action. That's that's my one complaint. There's some other things they could do better, but please stop. If you got to show commercials, just show the commercials. All right? We'll deal with not having a replay. Do not show replays from the last round during live action. Or even one time I saw them show a replay from the current round during the live action. Like, don't distract from the live action to explain what just happened 10 seconds ago. Come on, man. That should be common sense not to do that.
Yeah, that's not a good innovation. I know we like I think the World Football League or whatever, not the the WWF league that was around for a while.
Oh, the XFL.
The XFL?
Yeah, you talking about the football league that was from the WWE?
Yeah, I think they actually brought some new camera looks and techniques and stuff, some different techniques that I think the NFL picked up maybe a year or two later or something.
Yeah.
This just isn't, like you said, this bringing stuff from the first minute of the fight into the second minute of the fight. We don't need to see that.
No, definitely do not need to see that. I was so mad when they did that. Like, what are you doing? I'm trying to watch the fight. And you bringing up something that happened a minute ago. Like, if you can't show up between rounds, just don't do it.
I will say, though, I don't know what the lead-in this weekend with college football being where it is now. I don't know what action could be on ESPN. And like I said, I haven't really dug into this fight. I don't know what's going on the sports calendar Saturday. But with Isaac Dogbe, who you also saw at Gila River Arena out in Phoenix, when we linked up, Dogbe's on here again. I don't know much about his opponent, but Dogbe is a ferocious puncher at 122 pounds. And then in the opener will be rising prospect Teofimo Lopez at lightweight going up against a guy named Mason Menard, who's a steady veteran. But yeah, Dogbe and Lopez. I mean, Lopez is one of the top 5, under 23, under 22 fighters in the game. So much different feel. And if I could hit on it really quickly, man, that's just why, right now with some of the different content that I'm reading and watching and seeing out here covering boxing, I just don't know how we argue about promoters and get behind promoters and tear down other promoters, man. I think it's awesome to get different presentation. You get a stark contrast between a PBC show and a top ranked show and the World Boxing Super Series stuff and then the zone stuff. And all of it might not be great for everybody, but I think Saturday is a great day for skill and volume, where we saw all of the time elapsed last Saturday when not a lot of work was being done, or just very choppy fighting. And this week we should see something different.
Yeah, all the guys you mentioned are very skilled. Like you said, we saw in person Dogby we both were caught off guard that it ended so fast in his last fight. He was here in Arizona. So yeah, he definitely has the skills to pay the bills. Yeah, and Lopez, he's a monster. He's very exciting. So yeah, it's a very good card, man. Top Rank is definitely doing big things. Like I said, my only complaint with ESPN is it seems like they are still new to boxing, even though they had the Friday night boxing back in the day and all that stuff. This new regime seems not to understand some of the the intricacies of boxing, that you just don't need the extras sometimes.
Yeah.
But now let's move on to a little football. All right. Now we had a situation this past week that came up with former Kansas City Chief running back Kareem Hunt. There was a video that came out from February of him in a hotel hallway putting his hands on a young lady. It was rumored that the young lady called him the N-word, which is not an excuse to be violent. He was, most people were trying to hold him back. He still managed to push her and kick her. Got released by the team. He's on the exempt list, which means he won't be, even if he got picked up, he wouldn't be able to play. So my question to you is, do you think he deserves a second chance, and does he get one?
I don't want to turn off any fans, that listen to you, or any supporters that you had that listen to you. I don't want to seem ignorant or callous. I do want to speak a little freely, and I want to speak from a place of being real. From what I witnessed and observed in that video, man, that's just not grounds, in my opinion, for a guy to lose his career. I know, and I feel like the world right now, man, is so binary that it's either yes, no on everything. And if you have a different opinion, we're at war versus, just respecting, a spectrum of opinions. And, here's a young lady that this man didn't know, before a couple hours, a few hours. None of us heard the audio. I thought, he didn't even go into any detail with Lisa Salters the other night. I give him a lot of credit for sitting down and taking an interview with her. He didn't go into any detail. He basically was, showed a lot of, he was contrite. Of course he's a guy without a job right now. He's booted off of a Super Bowl caliber team. So, of course, there's going to be contrition and all of that. But, like I said, for me, man, she struck him. She called him the N-word, allegedly. She was at his place of residence. She wouldn't leave. I don't know all the details. I just felt like this was young people stuff, man. This was young people stuff that blew up. There was nobody there to quell some of the activity and the energy and all of that stuff. We can't even say that he didn't even really kick her that hard. I mean, even saying that is like offensive to some people, man. But I got the sense like he knew he messed up when he went into that kick, and that he pulled it a little bit. The shove, I felt like he shoved the guy, and then the guy shoved in was pushed forward into her. I guess for me, man, I just can't look at that video and say definitively that he's a horrible dude. He's a horrible young man. Like, you never deserve to work again. I mean, like I tell people on my podcast, man, it was some years, the first few years of me and my wife being married and two younger people, you know, getting used to one another, and her definition of a husband. Not that I was really running the streets, but it was different things that I was doing or trying to hang out when she wanted attention or she wanted to be number one. And we had some nights that were where I was embarrassed. And, you know, I never lost my job, but I understand it. It's the NFL. You know, if you want to say that he, you know, he lied, you know, by not letting the Chiefs know what happened, again, that's a young person's decision, man. Like, nobody at that time, for what he knew, I don't even know what he knew the next day as far as, you know, there being video. You know, how did there was no police, the police didn't go and view the videotape. So, who even knew there was video? You know, who, I don't know, man. Like I said, I hope I'm not being looked at as ignorant and all of that stuff, but a lot of this stuff nowadays, man, is complicated. Listen to the music that these kids and younger people listen to. Listen to the values that they have. Look at some of the relationships that they have and what's the norm in these relationships. It's a touchy situation, man. So like I said, I'm not of the favor that this guy never makes it back into the league. That's just not my opinion.
No, I definitely appreciate your honesty and respect it. That's why this is called The Real Deal, because we want you to bring the real when we talk about any issue. And with this one, I feel like if there's no video and you just describe what happened, then he's still on the team. There's been plenty of worse situations. You can look at his teammate, for example, Tyreek Hill. When you describe that situation of what Tyreek Hill allegedly did, it's much worse than what we saw from Kareem Hunt. But there's no video. So with Tyreek Hill, because there's no video, he's out here living his best life, getting numbers, going to Pro Bowls. Kareem Hunt, because there is video, his career is in danger. I do think that he definitely made a big mistake. When people are trying to hold you back, you have that moment to think. Like, I understand being angry. We've all been there. We've all been angry, saw red. But once you have people holding you back, you have a moment to think about, okay, I have much more to lose in this situation than everybody else around me. When you're a public figure, in any case, especially being in the NFL, you know one mistake in the public eye that could be judged wrong can cost you your career. So you have to be thoughtful of that at all times. So that's why I was disappointed with him in that situation, especially if, let's say she called him the N-word, and she just, you know, at that point she's saying it just to get a reaction from you. So my reaction would have been, well, thank you for letting me know that you're racist. I appreciate it. And I'll keep pushing. Like, just to say that word to get a reaction out of me, I'm not going to beat you up for it because that's what you want. You want me to prove that I'm the ignorant N-word that you think I am. So I'm not going to let you bring that emotion out of me. I understand he's young. So because of that youth, I do think he gets a second chance. It's different than with Ray Rice. Now, Ray Rice, I'm not comparing the situation. Ray Rice was much worse, right? He knocked out his fiance, like much worse. But he didn't get a second chance because he was a little older, coming off a bad season. Kareem Hunt, 23 years old, coming off a season where he's beasting. I think he gets a chance next year. And I'm not going to be mad when somebody picks him up. You know, somebody picked up Reuben Foster. And Reuben Foster has repeated incidents. So with the NFL, it's such a league of hypocrisy. You know, and we not even gonna bring up the fact that Reuben Foster and all these other guys who have done things wrong that are much worse than kneeling have a job, and Colin Kaepernick doesn't. Just gonna put that in there, not gonna dwell on it, just to make you think about it. So, yeah, go ahead.
I mean, and I hate to further. I hope this isn't something that's looked at as controversial or really stirring the pot, man. But we can sit here nowadays and watch. We can sit here and watch unarmed people getting shot and killed on videos. It's not. I'm not even just limited to. Look at the dude who killed the former football player Joe Morton.
Yeah.
That was civilian on civilian. So I'm just saying we're sitting here in a day and age where we can look at various situations where one person shoots somebody over some words and then says, it basically comes down to this very vague stand your ground language, and afterwards, large segments of the population don't feel that the shooter should serve a day in prison or should even have any regrets about taking somebody's life. So I'm sorry, man. I didn't see nothing on that video for the guy to lose his career. I'm just sorry. And I was kind of shocked to see some of the. I saw a tweet from Jamel Hill where she didn't want to hear nothing about how hard or how soft she was kicked or whatever. Like I said, we're in such a binary world, man, where it's either yes or no. And I just think there's layers to all of this stuff. Like I said, we didn't hear the audio. I don't know what was going on. Just like in the Kareem videos, I don't know what was going on 5 minutes before that video. And I credit the dude. He didn't even sit there with Lisa Saunders and say, I really need you to understand why I was provoked. He was just like, man, I just messed up. And then lastly, I feel like the dude that followed him out of the room and grabbed him initially, I don't know why he didn't do his, like all the bag carriers and the weed carriers in the clique, and in the camp, they should be the first ones to build up a wall around the athlete. Like this is how we getting it right now. I don't know how they all don't get together and make sure that this stuff does not happen.
No, that's a very good point. When you think about the yes men that are around these athletes, they get so caught up in just being yes men that they don't think, like, at a time I should say something because this guy who's paying my bills right now could mess it up for not only himself, but if I'm eating off of him, he messes it up for me too. So you should definitely say something that, if you see a situation going like that, like you said, build a wall, make sure he doesn't touch this woman in any way. Like you said, even with the kick, I agree with you that the kick didn't look like he just like tapped her over. But, like you said, we live in a world now where there's no nuance to anything like in nuance to any of those type of situations. So I hope that he gets a second chance. We're on the same page with that. Only thing that, like I said, he shouldn't have reacted, especially if someone's trying to get a reaction out of you. I just hate when people fall to that trap. Don't fall for the trap when someone's trying to get a reaction out of you.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Just like no different than my man Ezekiel Elliott. A lot of these guys, man, the worst thing about them is that they just were foolish or they were ignorant enough to allow themselves to get into this situation. And that's kind of why you got to punish them, is just because you were ignorant. Just like Foster, he goes back to this woman who he's already had a police involved incident with, and then you're going to be in town for the weekend, and that's who you hook up out of all the people in the state of Florida? You hook up with a person who already had you in jeopardy? Nah, fam, I would have passed on that.
Excellent point. Yes, there's so, move on. Move on from that. Yeah, the Reuben Foster situation, especially if it's true that she lied on you. Like the time it got reported earlier this year where he was about to get suspended and all that, and then she turned around and recanted. if it's true that she was able to go somewhere and lie on you, that's not something that, it's not like she, told a little tale about you stealing food or something. Like, she tried to ruin your career and then recanted on that. Once you recant, like, we're done. Thank you for telling the truth, but I can't mess with you no more. Like, come on, man. Like, that's a excellent point. Move on. So now let's move on to a little action on the football field. We're going to touch on a few games that happened in Week 13 and do Week 14 predictions before we get out of here. So, of course, I got to touch on Thursday night's matchup as my New Orleans Saints fell to the Dallas Cowboys 13-10. The Cowboys are now 7-5. The Saints are 10-2. Dak Prescott had a pretty good game, went 24 for 28, 248 yards, 1 touchdown. Ezekiel Elliott, he carried the load, but he definitely struggled against the Saints' number 1 ranked rush defense as he had 23 carries for 76 yards. Drew Brees had by far his worst game of the season, went 18 for 28, 127 yards, 1 TD, 1 pick. And the Saints' offense was really anemic. It was hard to watch. What was your takeaway from this game? Do you think the Cowboys are really on that level?
Yeah, man. I mean, it pains me to say it, man, but I think defensively, man, they got a lot of young guys. I think this Van Der Esch cat, like I said, I don't know measurables about from position to position, but this Van Der Esch cat coming from eight-man football in Idaho or whatever as a teenager or high school player, man, he seems to have a heck of a motor and just seems to know his assignment and gets there and is making plays. And then I think one thing, very early in that game, you saw, I think it was Lawrence earlier in the week who came out and kind of gave like a boxing analogy about punching somebody in the face or punching them in the mouth. And I think just collectively, man, they just and then that the Jalen the Ramsey cat, what was his name from Notre Dame, the other linebacker?
Yeah, is it Jalen Ramsey?
Yeah. He's running around. They got some speed. I mean, I hate to say it, man, but I think the defense is more than qualified to they can get after you at all 3 levels, or at least at the first 2.
Yeah, that defensive line is for real. Like, the offensive line for the Saints has been, if not the best offensive line, one of the best offensive lines in the league all year. And
right.
So the fact that the Cowboys' defensive line was able to dominate that game the way they did, I was shocked by it. And when the Saints only give up 13 points, you're like, oh, they win in that game. There's no way you're holding them to less than 13. And the fact that we still lost that game. Now, Drew Brees was off. He started seeing ghosts at one point, especially that last pick he threw it off his back foot 5 yards behind Kamara. You just don't see them things from Drew Brees on a normal, especially inside a dome. So you got to give it up to the Cowboys defense. I think if they see each other in the playoffs again in the Superdome, it'll be a different story, especially with the Saints having the time to adjust and, not playing their third game in 12 days, all that type of stuff. But you got to give the Cowboys respect for that. And now it seems like they're in position to, especially in the NFC East, take that division right now.
Yeah, in contrast to the Washington team, I respect your podcast. To see a team go out and get a win like that, the Cowboys get a win over the Saints like that. That's what I don't see happening. I see it happening very rarely in Washington. And so when you see a team rise to the occasion, man, that just lets you know that that shows you that ceiling of that team that they can put it together and win a big one. But like you said, similar to your thoughts on Wilder and Fury in the rematch, I definitely think the Saints can take it higher. Better preparation and all of that, and being in the Superdome, I could still see them easily putting up 30 points, on this same Cowboys team.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. I think if a rematch happened in the playoffs, I definitely wouldn't lose sleep over playing the Cowboys again. And something about playing against the Clapper in the playoffs would, I wouldn't be too mad about that. For the for the next matchup, I wanted to touch on this one just because of the QB situation. We had Baltimore defeat Atlanta 26-16. Baltimore is now 7-5. Atlanta's 4-8. Such a surprise that they, struggled so much this year. Lamar Jackson went 12 for 21, 125 yards passing, 17 carries for 75 yards and a touchdown. They also had Edwards, the running back, get 82 yards. And Matt Ryan went 16 for 26, only 131 yards and one touchdown as Baltimore's defense really showed up. So if you're Baltimore, what are you doing with Joe Flacco? Are you bringing him back in? You just getting him ready to get traded next year? What's your idea from Baltimore's perspective on Flacco?
This is totally ignorant of the cap situation and what whatever the cap hit would be, or what does he have? 2 years left on the deal, 2 or 3 years?
Yeah, I think 2 years.
I think you gotta. And then I don't even know if this win streak right here is bringing Harbaugh back. It seemed like a few weeks ago they were ready to. It was kind of the writing was on the wall there, and it just might be that time in Baltimore where it just might be time for new leadership. So they have some decisions to make. I just think, with Flacco being, I think over the last 5 years or something, I'm pretty sure it comes down to him and Eli Manning in leading the league in in interceptions. And I just think you just need to go with Jackson at this point. I think if the coaching staff is committed to the formula that it takes to win with Jackson, and you can continue to add new wrinkles week to week. And this is why I say with some of these athletic or mobile quarterbacks coming out of college, it may take a little bit more longer nights in the planning to get these guys ready and the way that you attack opposing teams, and definitely your defense has to be there. But I just think when a guy is young and has his legs and can run around and make plays, if so long as he can figure out how to stay healthy and lessen the punishment that he takes, and run. I think we talked about it my first time on the podcast. Is for all these mobile guys, even Russell Wilson and whatnot, the guys who can see us another 7 yards out there and make up their mind that I'm just going to take these 3 or 4 and live for another play, I'm okay with those mobile quarterbacks. And I think right now, if we can just buy some time to it slows down for Jackson, and as long he's inspiring the team, man. Defensive players play better if they see that guy out there doing that stuff. They rally around the guy, and I just think it's going to be very hard to go back to Flacco. The playoff drought with them not going to the playoffs the last 3 or 4 years, maybe even 5. The fact that Flacco is consistently inconsistent, especially at the right moments, I just don't see how you turn it back over to him.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think what they could do going into next season, maybe you look for a trade partner, a team that's desperate, like, say, a Jacksonville. They got to be done with the Blake Bortles experiment at this point. Maybe they're looking for a QB. Because he played decent this year until he had the hip injury, so he still has some value. But I think Lamar Jackson is definitely the future. You might as well go ahead and get it started now. So for this next matchup, I usually don't touch on 2 trash teams, but there was some news that came out of this one. We had the Arizona Cardinals defeat the Green Bay Packers 20-17. Arizona is now 3-9. Green Bay fell to 4-7-1. Josh Rosen went 11 for 26, 149 yards. David Johnson had 69 yards rushing. Aaron Rodgers went 31 for 50, 233 yards, 1 touchdown. And there was no running game for Green Bay as they only had 36 yards from Aaron Jones. And right after the game, usually, a coach gets fired on Monday, maybe Tuesday, but Green Bay wasted no time and fired Mike McCarthy right after the game. What are your thoughts on Green Bay firing Mike McCarthy?
I just don't think they're giving this guy a lot of good groceries over the last 3 years, maybe even 4 years. The talent is just not there on that team. I mean, no running back to speak of the last several, ever since Eddie Lacy left. And then even, 1 year before Lacy was out of there, it seemed like, he was in decline. And they just haven't, and then I don't even know who these guys are that Rodgers is throwing the ball to. We haven't seen I don't even know who the tight end is. Oh, they have Graham, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Jimmy Graham this year.
That relationship really hasn't been the most fruitful for whatever reason. We really just don't hear Jimmy Graham's name as being a factor as much as it was his first couple of years. They let Jordy Nelson go. The secondary hasn't really been, in my opinion, an NFL caliber, secondary. It was almost like, it was almost like Rodgers had proven himself to be one of the few quarterbacks that you can put 90% of the game on his shoulders, and they can go out there and get it done. But that's just not working there. So I do think it was in one sense, with the team looking like it's going to be well under 500 this year, it allows Mike, and I'm hearing this from some of the commentary that I've heard, but it allows McCarthy to go out and get him another gig, because he's going to easily find him a new home. So it gives it, and I would think, this is the second coach that we've lost in the season, right?
Yeah, because Hugh Jackson also got fired.
Right, that's right, Hugh Jackson. But I'm thinking maybe this could start a trend, and a couple of teams could decide to move on before the end of the season. And the guys that are out there looking for jobs, it's an opportunity for them to get them lined up and see what they want to do next. But I really think he's being used as the GOAT here, the scapegoat, and that whoever has been managing those personnel decisions should be the guy that we start taking a look at.
Yeah, that's a very good point. They've had a few years here where the defense hasn't measured up. You mentioned the running game. I like Jones this year as a back, but it's still very inconsistent. And maybe on the offensive line as well. The Cardinals, I watched a lot of this game. I live in Arizona, so it was the only game on TV at the time. And it happened to be good, so I was like, all right, let me watch this game. And the Cardinals have talent on defensive line. You have someone like, a Chandler Jones who's able to dominate. And, you don't have the offensive line talent that you normally have. You don't have the wide receiver. You have one good wide receiver. You have a tight end, Jimmy Graham, who has spurts here and there, but he's no longer the guy he was in New Orleans. So that's a very good point about the personnel. And you mentioned the groceries, going back to the great Bill Parcells quote, you're a coach, if you want to cook the dinner, you might want to have a hand in buying the groceries. A lot of coaches believe in that, and you need the good groceries to make a good dinner. You can't make good pizza without the ingredients. So for the firing, I was a little shocked by it because it happened so fast after the game. Usually, you get it Monday, or a guy who has a former Super Bowl, maybe you give him to the end of the year. But maybe you're right. Maybe they did him a favor. He gets a little time off, gets to recuperate, get him a job next season. We'll see going forward. And who do you get to replace a guy like that? Because, you got guys out here who have been coaching for 15 years, not to point no elbows, but at Marvin Lewis, who don't have a playoff win and still got their jobs. So when you think about guys like that, and you have a guy who's been to several NFC championships, has a Super Bowl on his belt, how do you replace a guy like that? It's going to be a very hard job to do, but we'll see going forward. The next matchup I wanted to touch on. Oh, go ahead.
Just wait until they see Joe Philbin, how they look under Philbin this week. I mean, he was terrible in Miami, so
that's true.
If naming him the interim coach is supposed to do something, wow.
Nah, that's a very good point. He was one of the coaches that, I remember, just how bad he was in Miami, and players didn't want to play for him. Yeah, it was pretty bad in Miami. Now, maybe he learned from that experience, I'm not. You definitely want to give a guy a second chance. So we'll see. This is an opportunity to prove that he's learned from that.
It's not. I don't think the problem is his X's and O's. He's not a good pairing with today's athletes, in my opinion.
Nah, that definitely could be very true. Like I said, because like you said, it wasn't X and O's in Miami. It was the fact that the Tommies and the Joes didn't want to play for him. So that's something that you have to look forward to or have your eye on. The next matchup I wanted to touch on, this team is on a 9-game winning streak. And it seems weird. It's like, is this team really for real? They really win 9 games in a row? Can you really believe in this squad? The Houston Texans defeated the Cleveland Browns 29-13. They're now 9-3. Cleveland fell to 4-7-1. Deshaun Watson went 22 for 31, 224 yards, a touchdown. Lamar Miller had 103 yards rushing. Alfred Blue had 54 yards rushing. And DeAndre Hopkins also caught the ball for 91 yards. Houston, a true Super Bowl contender in your opinion?
Yeah, man, I think so. The two bookends on defense with Watt and Clowney. Merciless is in there too. I'm not too familiar with their back group, but hell, you don't have to be that great when you don't have to hold, when you don't have to maintain coverage, for 4 or 5 seconds. You can be a little shabby on the back end, but and then offensively, man, like I said, when you got a fiery guy out there like Hopkins with some of the best hands in the game today, can get those chunk plays. Probably getting 2 chunk plays. That might need to be a new stat, man. Like for players, who's getting chunk plays more than 2.5 chunk plays per game, but can make the big catches in the big moments. And then you got a quarterback who can get it done with his legs when he needs to, but then can also make all the throws. He can extend plays. Third and 3, he's deadly with the RPOs and all of that. I like them. I really like. And one key thing is I think the team has great leadership between Watt and then with the leader, the little bit of time that we've come to know Watson as a pro. He seems to be a great leader. So I think they got all the key pieces, man. I do think, like your Saints, they need one bad game before the playoffs. They need to be brought down to earth a little bit. But and again, like I said with Lamar Jackson, when you got a young guy back there, I know he's had the injuries in the past, so he may be a little more adverse to taking contact and whatnot. But he's a heck of an athlete to have it, back there. Make it, conduct and everything.
Yeah, I'm with you.
The running backs are a little underrated.
Definitely. Lamar Miller is someone who's been productive in this league for a while. Alfred Blue's been very good as a backup running back. And when you have a quarterback like Deshaun Watson, Lamar Jackson, it makes the running back's job that much easier. The holes open up so much on read option plays because that defensive end can no longer just come in on the running back. He has to, hold up and wait for Lamar Jackson or Deshaun Watson to see if they're coming outside, which helps the running backs out as well. So I definitely agree with your analysis on that. It took me a while to come around on Houston because they started off the year so bad. But, 9 wins in a row, it's not something that you can sneeze at all. They're definitely doing their thing. And you have to, like you mentioned with the defense, when you have a defense like that, you got to put in the conversation, especially in the AFC, when you have teams like the Steelers. Speaking of the last game we're going to go over from Week 13, Sunday night we had the Los Angeles Chargers come back to defeat the Pittsburgh Steelers 33-30. Los Angeles is now 9-3. The Pittsburgh Steelers are 7-4-1. Phillip Rivers had a game. He went 26 for 36, 299 yards, 2 touchdowns. He threw most of his passes to Keenan Allen, who had 14 catches for 148 yards and a touchdown. Ben Roethlisberger went 29 for 45, 281, 2 TDs, 1 pick. Antonio Brown had 10 catches for 154 yards and a touchdown. All right, from this game, do you finally think this is a year where the Chargers can't be trusted? We've seen this story before with the Chargers. They're talented. They have all the pieces. You have, Bosa on defense. You got, you had Gordon on offense, but you got Keenan Allen there. Is this team to be trusted, or is it something where we still have to have our guard up against the Chargers?
No, I think as long as Gordon can be somewhat healthy, I think they have a shot, man. I think they got that young Derwin James.
Yeah, he's a monster
back there. I think when you got a young playmaker back there like that who is making differences early, that helps out. And like you said, all of the other pieces are just there. I mean, and you got an experienced quarterback who's fiery, who's the leader of the team, and then you have again, you got that wide receiver number one. I mean, the dude. Every time I see Keenan Allen, man, he jumps off the screen, and it's not about it's not a disruptive energy or a disruptive swagger. It's just all between the lines. I'm giving it 100% out here. Just love for the game is what I get out of that type of guy. And obviously, obviously Rivers loves the game. And then Gordon, like I said, he's I don't know, man. He makes the game look pretty easy, as a running back. He's a different. He has a pretty unique style, in my opinion, amongst running backs. So, they got all the pieces, man. I mean, a proven offensive coordinator, I believe, in Woodson Hunt. The head coach I probably couldn't point the brother out of a lineup, I just like that it's a very undercover team.
But yeah, well, being, the people call them the Clippers of football, being the second team in Los Angeles, even their initials are LAC, you're going to get undercover. Right. With the Rams, especially with the Rams, playing like they're playing this year, being a Super Bowl contender. But yeah, the Chargers definitely have what it takes to be in the Super Bowl this year. You mentioned how Rivers is a veteran that you can depend on. You got that number one receiver in Allen. You have, a veteran tight end in Antonio Gates who, he's not going to kill you anymore with his stats, but you need that 3rd and 5, that 3rd and 6. He's still there. It can be depended on. And the defense is looking good. So you still have the pieces there. And this year you don't have the crazy mistakes. You don't have to block, the block punts and the missed field goals. This year those field goals are going in. So those things make a difference, and I think the Chargers are legit. So that was our Week 13 review. We're going to go and touch on a few games from Week 14 here. First game I wanted to touch on for Week 14, looking at the schedule here. We got a few interesting matchups. First one here I'm going to look at, we got, Monday night we have a good one with the Vikings and the Seahawks. We have a game. We talked a little bit about Kirk Cousins earlier. You got the Seahawks who are rolling right now, a team that could be dangerous in the playoffs. Both these teams fighting for a wild card spot. How do you see this matchup?
Yeah, I think Vikings fan or Skull Nation or whatever their nickname is. I have a partner who's in the Minnesota area who kind of been my pen pal. I might even mention him last time on my visit to the real deal. But I think he's saying that the rumblings are that the fan base is turning pretty cold on Cousins with the pick sixes and the untimely interceptions. And I just think out there with that 12 man, I think it's an omen that it's just the wrong situation. I just mentioned earlier in the night in the episode about Gruden and Cousins in primetime games, and this falls on Monday night out in the great Northwest. Hey, they're going to be so mad at that guaranteed $84 million on Monday night. It's going to be ridiculous.
Yeah, I'm with you. The Seahawks are balling out right now. They got their running game. They're starting to look like their old selves. Of course, they're no longer the Legion of Boom. I call them the Legion of Whom because we don't know who is in their secondary. But they definitely have the talent there, and they're starting to find their way. So I got the Seahawks winning that game as well. The next matchup I wanted to look at, we have Baltimore at Kansas City. Very interesting matchup. We know all about the things that's going on in Kansas City. We talked about it. And they barely beat the Raiders this past week, as the Raiders made that a game. And you have Baltimore coming in behind the energy of Lamar Jackson. How do you see this matchup?
That's a tough one, man, because the Chiefs' defense continues to be the hamstring of the team. And here it is this late in the season, and they just still haven't found their identity or their leader on defense. And here you come in with this running quarterback, where you kind of got to look at some different things this week from normally just facing, a conventional NFL offense. So it's an opportunity for the Ravens to win this one. But I don't know, man. I still think the Chiefs' offense is so dynamic. Eric Bieniemy is a guy that, probably garners a lot of consideration for some of these open positions next year. Never thought I'd say that watching him, as an NFL running back and at the University of Colorado and whatnot. But I think they still find a way to get it done. I mean, when you got so many, I don't know, man, the way they attack defenses and some of the resilience that we've seen from Mahomes and the creativity in the passing game and his, I don't even know if it's a real gunslinger mentality to me. I still think it might be a way for him to find a way to get to 28, 27 points and make it hard for the Ravens to kind of, without dominating the turnover game, could be a hard victory for them.
Yeah, for me, I got Kansas City winning, but definitely wouldn't be shocked if Baltimore was able to pull it off because of the different style they're playing right now. And Kansas City's defense, like you mentioned, isn't, inspiring belief in them right now. But I'm going to go with Kansas City in this matchup, but I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be a close one where the defense is able to just slow down Kansas City just a little bit, but not enough to make it a true game. Sunday night, we have a really good matchup between the LA Rams and the Chicago Bears. Now, personally, I'm going to be rooting for the Bears as the Saints need the Rams to lose now to regain the home field advantage for the playoffs. And the Bears, I don't know if Trubisky's going to be back. I don't know if they announced it yet. But I don't think Chase Daniel's done a bad job, even though they lost to the Giants this week. How do you see this matchup of strength on strength with the offense of the Rams and the defense of the Bears?
That's tough, man, because the Bears got a nice defense. They have the home field. They're hoping that it's kind of cold, make them Southern Cowboys a little stiffer and slow them down a little bit coming out there in those elements. I don't know, man. I think the Rams get that one, man, because I think the defense, I think they make plays at the right time. And then Donald is just phenomenal, man. I mean, and that Ecubon cat from a couple weeks ago, I've never even heard of that brother before. But he was pretty nice. You never know when Sue can, pop up and have a good night. And I don't know, man. I'm such a fan of Aaron Donald to see a guy having an impact on things from in the trenches like that, leading the league in sacks. So I thought just watching him makes it makes watching defensive players fun. And I don't know if the Bears just have enough offensively to pull it out. But between watching Donald and then watching Mack on the other side, Eddie Jackson, Chicago it's amazing how fast they've turned it around.
Definitely. I didn't expect them to be that good this year. Like, once they got Khalil Mack, it's like, okay, that defense is going to be real. But, what can Trubisky do? I've been someone who's been critical of Trubisky. And he's starting to manage a little better. Yeah, he still, leaves something wanted when it comes to his accuracy. He could be very wild at times.
Yeah.
But he's definitely, turning that corner. He's someone who's mobile as well, who brings that dynamic to the offense, like our theme for today. And I'm going to go with the Bears. I'm going to go with the upset in this one. I'm going to go with the Bears to win this game. And not just because, I want the Rams to lose, but I think the defense at home, I think that's a big portion of it as well. It's in Chicago, in the cold. I think that's going to help out Chicago, and I got Chicago winning this one. This week doesn't have that many interesting matchups. Of course, I'm going to go with my Saints to beat the Bucks and bounce back from, the Cowboys loss. But looking at the rest of the schedule, it's not really that interesting. But those matchups that we went over are definitely going to be the interesting ones. And I don't want to keep you too long, so we're going to go straight into our forgotten players. Now, forgotten players is where we pay homage to players who may have been good but not great, great but not recognized, or players who you may have just forgotten about who we want to remind you of. Who is your forgotten player today, Wood?
I'm going to stick home with a Washington player. I just wanted to shed a little light on running back Timmy Smith. Running back is one of the reasons why I started watching the NFL, and the running back actually reminds me of a boxer, in my opinion, because they have to use, they have to use their hands sometimes. They have to be physical. They have to be tough. They have to be in great shape, like a boxer. And it's usually it's one of the smaller rooms on the team as far as, you 4 or 5 wide receivers are in that wide receiver room. Some teams carry 3 quarterbacks, linebackers and the O and defensive line, but usually it's only the running back and teams don't even have fullbacks anymore. So, and then just the way that the running back has been devalued and to bring this home. And I think I might even mention a guy like Steven Jackson from the Rams. Here's a guy who had a phenomenal career in individual productivity, but never got to showcase himself in the playoffs with the St. Louis Rams. But now here Timmy Smith comes in for injured George Rogers in Super Bowl 22, I believe, back in 1987. The guy has a 204-yard game on 22 carries, has 2 touchdowns, a long run of 56, averages 9.2 yards per carry, and a 42-10 win, and only played one more year in Washington in '88. Just ran for 470 yards, and then the next year was in Dallas. Didn't do very much at all, and that was it. And it's just like I said, this guy comes and has this magical game, and nearly a perfect game for a running back in the biggest game of football. One of the maybe the top championship in all of American sports. And it's like he came and went. And like I said, we can watch week after week after week. A guy like, speaking of the Houston Texans, the guy from Arian
Foster.
Arian Foster, he had a couple of good years. Larry Johnson. I mean, the running back position is just, and then the fact that Le'Veon Bell couldn't even get, a deal this year and sitting a year out versus, being used in a manner in which he didn't want to be used in. So, I just wanted to shed light on Timmy Smith about being in the right place at the right time. And sometimes us as sports fans, we don't give that. We don't understand or don't value the importance of that, of just being in the right place at the right time. George Rogers, who was the starter for the Redskins that year, Washington that year, He was only able to get 5 carries in that game and in total 17 yards. And then Doug Williams had a huge 340-yard game, 4 touchdowns and 1 interception for one of the. I think that still might be the Super Bowl with the widest gap with the 42-10. I think that might be still the biggest blowout in the Super Bowl. So yeah, Timmy Smith, man. Oh, came out of Texas Tech. He was a 5th-round pick, and only played 7 games that year. Just kind of a unique story, if you ask me.
No, that's a very good forgotten player. Someone who, had to wait and was ready. You think about someone like Jalen Hurts for Alabama, who was ready when the opportunity came. Kind of very similar to that situation. For my forgotten player, I went with a wide receiver. This guy was actually on the show last week, so I want to give him a shout out. Mr. Jerry Porter. Spent 9 years in the NFL out of West Virginia. Big, fast. He was 6'2", 220, ran a 4.3. Still very good athlete. I play basketball against him every now and again. He still can get up and down the court. In his time in the NFL, played 8 years with the Raiders, 1 with the Jaguars. His best seasons were the 04 season and 05 season, where he had nearly 1,000 yards in each of those years, catching 64 and 76 catches, respectively. And he's someone who I'm planning to have on a show, much more coming down the road. So I want to give him a shout out in this episode as a forgotten player. So a big shout out to our forgotten players today. And Wood, man, I had a great time, and I hope you had a great time on the show today.
I did, man. I appreciate it. I haven't had a chance to do the Pay Me No Mind podcast too much lately. You kind of had me inspired, man, kind of moving over to YouTube a little bit more and focusing on boxing and whatnot. And, the fact that, to be honest, man, I really prefer to write and be behind the scenes, man, but I just haven't had the mental space lately to really write the way that I like to write and address the topics that I like to cover in the way that I like to cover them, mixing in my entertainment and, kind of, if anybody's ever read any of my articles, there's some hip-hop in there. It's probably a TV series. It's some unique angle that I'm going to try to, work in to make it, to bring together my world and share my world with people. So I hope to get back to doing a podcast to address all sports and not just stay limited to boxing. And I have to admit that some of the animus and the angst in the world of boxing the last couple of weeks with this Wilder fight really kind of dampen the brother's spirit with trying to be, like a beacon for the positive side of boxing and talking about good matchups and good, great athletes. And so it kind of felt like this week, like, man, maybe I need to get back to touching base. And then, me, man, I love to talk about my TV series and movies. So, yeah, I definitely want to get back, to the Pay Me No Mind show. And that's the one thing about podcasts. I see you get your networking is very good, and I see you get a good response. You're entrenched in, I see a lot of retweets of your content in your podcast, a wide variety of guests and all of that. So, that's awesome. But I guess for me, man, after 2 or 3 years of doing the Pay Me No Mind show, with the exception of you and maybe a handful of other people, man, I just really never get any feedback on anything. And then, YouTube kind of gives you that immediate feedback on your videos that do pop. So, but like I said, it's so much more exciting to me to sit back behind the scenes and behind a microphone or behind your keyboard, and versus being on the camera trying to, putting yourself out there like that.
Yeah, I definitely understand that. It can, like with YouTube, like you get the instant gratification, you get the instant comments, you see the views right away. You know, sometimes you'll do a video and you'll get that 1,000 views that day. With the podcast, for me, the reason I love the podcast, man, I just love the long form conversation. Like with the YouTube videos, you can't have like the conversation we had today about, Kareem Hunt. You don't have that conversation through YouTube, or just to have this whole show period, being able to, like, we really got into detail about Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder. You can't really do that with a YouTube video, or you can, but you don't know if people are going to give it the full watch. And I feel like with the podcast, you have more of an opportunity to do that. But please let people know where they can find you, follow you, and find your content.
Yeah, you can check me out definitely on the Pay Me No Mind YouTube channel. I do my boxing over there. I keep a separate playlist for the Bite Down Boxing videos that I do, which are fight previews and reviews. And, I'm starting to touch more on some of the day-to-day storylines in boxing. I think I'm pushing, just like I said, positivity, keeping the action first, keeping the matchups first, and keeping the winners first. And that's kind of more so what you get with my boxing coverage. I don't favor any one promoter over the other. If I have to be critical of a promoter's card or show, I can do that as well. But you can definitely find me at the Pay Me No Mind YouTube channel, and then also check out the Bite Down Boxing podcast, which if you just Google the Team Left Jab Network, it's an array of boxing podcasts over there to talk about. It's a UK show. It's a couple of the writers that have shows. I mean, it's a variety of different boxing podcasts on there. So that's the Team Left Jab Network. And then also come check me out at the BiteDownBoxing.com webpage. The Bite Down Boxing podcasts are over there. You can follow the Twitter link over there. You can check me out on Twitter at Bite Down Boxing. Also on Instagram. So I'm very easy to find. Like I said, I haven't been writing as much as I would really like to at the moment. And I also write at roundbyroundboxing.com and womenofboxing.com. So I'm easy to find. Just Google RL Woodson and come check me out. Let's interact and chop it up and enjoy the good things that the good memories and vibes that and experiences that sports bring to our lives.
Definitely. I echo that message 100%. Make sure you guys find R. Woodson, and he always gives great content, man. Make sure you check it out. And until next time, make sure you follow me at The Real Deal WDA on all platforms. And check out The Real Deal with Damian Adams. Subscribe to this podcast, tell your friends about it, subscribe to the YouTube channel. And until next time, go real or go home.